Hi, and welcome to a training tutorial on file management. Today we're going to talk about files, how they work on the website, how we upload them through the file manager, how we upload them through FTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol, and how we can even use something called SSH to look at files. It's going to start off a little bit basic and get more advanced. You're welcome to stay for as much or as little of it as you like. Now, as with the other tutorials, I'm on the Pro hosting package on the Tsohost Cloud. You can be on any package on the Tsohost Cloud you like, on the Lite or the Ultimate or the Standard. The control panel looks the same and it works the same. So we're here in the dashboard of a domain I've registered called tsotraining.co.uk. I haven't uploaded anything except one index page, and if we go straight to this file manager, what you'll see is the structure of the web space. This public_HTML is the folder that your website runs out of. For every website on our systems, your actual website runs out of this folder called public HTML. All these others are outside of the web space. So you can see here I've created a folder called private_folder. That's just where I might want to store some images, store some scripts I'm working on. If I was doing advanced development, I could store a PHP script outside of my public HTML. You don't need to worry about that. But this public HTML, this is where the magic happens. This is where the website resides. You can see I've got a file here called index.html. Now, if you're uploading a website, you need to be sure that the main page on your website is called index.html. That's something I want to quickly demonstrate to you. If we go to Tsohost Training in a browser, you'll see I've created a file there called index.html, but with a page content of hello Tsohost FTPers. If we edited this file and we do that by clicking it and then clicking preview, you can see that I've added the content there, and I could add another line below that said test 1, 2, 3, for example. And there you see it appears here. Now, if I'm editing like this, of course, I need to be using HTML, and I should really be putting say, BR there, or I should be doing a link to a web page there. Now, this is outside the scope of this tutorial, but HTML is pretty simple. So let's do that. That ahref means a link. So let's do OK. And we go to this page now, you'll see there's that with a link going to Google. So this is the very simple way to manage sites. What I wanted to show you in terms of the index page, if I was to rename this to test.html and then reloaded the page, you'll see it doesn't actually exist anymore. It doesn't take me there. Because it's not called index, the browser doesn't know that it needs to load the page called index. It wouldn't by default load a page called test.html. That page still exists and it shows the same content, but you can see in the top it's called test.html. If I go to index.html, I'll get a 404 error. This is a 404 error. It means the page isn't found. That's because it just doesn't exist. So I want to make sure that is called index.html. So that when I go to the web page, refresh it, you'll see it loads. So this is a file manager which is pretty simple. It lets you upload files, for example here. Well, that creates a new one. Lets me create a new folder, I believe. It'll let me upload a file from my computer, but we don't want to do that. If we want to do something more advanced, really what we need to use is FTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol. That's the way of you connecting from your computer to the web space. If you're developing in software like Dreamweaver or iWeb, all sorts of things that you might have on your computer, often when you publish your site, the details it's going to be asking for are these FTP details. And we create them in our control panel under FTP accounts. So let's click that. What it's asking me for here is a username and a password. That's pretty simple. I don't need to help you with that. So let's just set a username. I'm going to set myself as Seb because that's my name, and my password. And you can see my username is actually going to be seb@tsotraining.co.uk. So it'll be your name or whatever you set at yourdomainname.com. The reason for that is we have hundreds of thousands of FTP users on the system, and if I took the name Seb, then other people might be a little bit annoyed that they couldn't use the name Seb. So we use seb@yourdomain.com, for example. This bit about home directory is interesting. You know what I just showed you earlier where you have the folder paths and the website runs under public HTML, and then there was another folder I created called private folder? In this home directory, you can limit FTP accounts to be running from a specific folder. So if I wanted the FTP account to just run from my website, I would put in /public_HTML/. But if I wanted to run it from my private folder, I could do private folder, or I could even go even more specific. So folder 2 level 3, for example, and then when I logged in via FTP, I'd be taken directly to that folder and I wouldn't have access to anything else. That's useful if you might have someone who you just want to be able to upload images to a certain location, for example, but you don't want them to have access to the rest of your website. Actually, for today, and what I'd recommend you do, unless you have a really specific requirement not to do this, is just leave it as the default, as the /. That'll give you access to everything. Really, you don't want to have to lock down the FTP to different folders unless you're doing something really complicated. So let's create that. That's already created. I'm going to jump straight now into FileZilla, which is the piece of software we're going to use to download and upload files. I'm just going to quickly show you how you can install it because we get this asked quite a lot. So we're going to go to the FileZilla web page. Then you'll see this, FileZilla, the free FTP solution. You click that and you click this download FileZilla client and then you just install it here. That'll install on your website, on your computer really quickly. It's very easy, it's very lightweight. There's a slight thing I found on a Mac just now. If you download it to a Mac, it might give you an error saying you do not have permission to open this because it doesn't trust the publisher. Just right click the application or control click the application and click open and then that will bypass that check for you. That's just for FileZilla on a Mac. I think it's probably a bug they're working on. So now I do have FileZilla on my computer, so I'm going to load it up. Here we are. What you can see it's asking me for is a host, a username, a password, and a port. Now, the username we know already. The password is the one I just set. The other things we need to fill out then are the host and the port. For the host, if we go back to this web page, we basically have 3 options. We can either use the simplest, which is ftp.yourdomainname.com. So in my case, that would be ftp.tsotraining.co.uk. Now, there's oftentimes you might have just set this domain up. So if you've just done this, there's a chance that your domain isn't fully registered or hasn't been recognized, that means propagated around the web yet. So there's a chance if you use that, it might not recognize it, it might not find the server. So there's 2 other things you can use. The first is we give you a white label one called ftp.gridhost.co.uk. That'll work for any site on our systems, ftp.gridhost.co.uk. Alternatively, you can just use the IP address because all these names do, all this ftp.tsotraining, all that ftp.gridhost.co.uk does is point to this IP address. So if you're ever having issues connecting to a server, just use the IP address, it's the simplest. So let's go back to FileZilla. Let's do 91.208.99.4. Then we've got the username, the password. For the port, we can just leave that as it is. It is on port 21, but that's the default. So if you leave that as is, then you don't need to make any changes. Connect. As you can see, we've now connected. We've got the public HTML folder, the private folder. There you are, and you can see exactly how it was in the file manager. And I can, again, just like I did on the inside, I can rename that to test.html, and then I can go back to the website. You see it doesn't load, but I can go to test.html and that's there. So that is very simply FTP and file management. There's one more slightly advanced thing I want to show you, and this is called SSH. It's called shell access. That is a way of doing things via the command line, and this is really for advanced users, but it's a very lightweight and easy way to do things, and that will be under secure shell. I activated this. It takes 15 minutes to activate. If you want to deactivate it, you can deactivate it. And it gives me a host name, a server, a username and a password. So I can go to terminal, which is what I use on a Mac, and then I would type SSH tsotrain at 91.208.99.6. That logs me into the server, and then I can take the password, and I'd go paste that in like that, and I'm connected. There's a couple of commands which are really useful on SSH. One of them is ls, that means list, and one of them is cd. So I've now listed that. I'm going to go cd to public HTML, and then list again. Again, you can see all of my files. That's just another way of viewing and changing your files. And if you get more familiar with SSH, it becomes really easy to do things. For example, I could edit this page, change that, save it, rename it to index.html, and I can go back to my website, and you can see that's changed. So as you get more advanced, it becomes easier to manage things. Really, we give you so many options. You've got the file manager in the control panel, which is right here. You've got FTP, so you can use FileZilla, which is really, really straightforward, and you can use those FTP credentials in software like Dreamweaver or iWeb, or if you're really advanced and you're feeling adventurous, you can use SSH. Loads of features. Let me know if you get stuck with anything, and we'll be happy to help you out.